Golden hour painted the water in molten amber, matching the aged bourbon in Marcus Bellamy's hand. His cufflinks gleamed monogrammed in gold. His suit bespoke imported $6,000 before tailoring hugged his frame with arrogant perfection. He looked like a man who had one, because he believed he had. 2 houses, 5 joint accounts, and even the bloody French china set, Marcus said, swirling his drink as he grinned at Russell Pierce. All mine. And the judge. She barely blinked. Clean, surgical. Russell leaned back, adjusting his tie with a smirk. Your ex's lawyer didn't see it coming. She didn't have a lawyer, Marcus corrected. She had a friend, that Marianne girl, women's advocacy, emotion over logic. Please. He lifted his glass. To leverage. They toasted. Soft jazz played in the background. Waitstaff moved like shadows. Everything about the space whispered power exclusivity control. What about the baby? Russell asked softer. Marcus exhaled through his nose. Not mine. Yet. Legally sure. But emotionally she'll find someone else to read bedtime stories. That chapter's closed. There was a pause. The kind that ripples underneath conversations even in the glow of victory. Russell shifted. You know I met Clara once. At that fundraiser. She painted right. Marcus shrugged. She was talented in the way people with hobbies are. Galleries liked her work, sure. But she didn't want to grow. No ambition. She liked staying small. Russell studied his friend for a beat, then changed the subject. So what now? Marcus leaned forward, eyes sparkling. Now I expand the Riverfront project. The historic board just needs a little push. We get that and I'll own half of Broughton Street by year's end. He said it like prophecy. Outside, a warm wind moved through the live oaks, their Spanish moss swaying as if whispering. Inside, Marcus Bellamy grinned wide, basking in his moment. But somewhere beneath the surface, in the glint of his watch and the hollow ring of his laugh, was a trace of something else. Not doubt, not yet, just emptiness. Like a man sitting in a throne no one else respected. At the edge of Savannah's Victorian district, a single light burned in a second-story apartment above a bakery that still carried the scent of cinnamon and old sugar. Clara May stood barefoot, a smudge of paint on her cheek, her belly curved under a soft linen shirt. The studio was smaller than she was used to. No gallery space, no skylight, just walls, canvas, and silence. She stared at the half-finished painting in front of her. A house fractured down the middle. One side vibrant and alive, the other gray, sterile, distant. She hadn't meant to paint it that way, but her hands knew before her mind did. A knock came at the door. Clara. It was her mother's voice, gentle, warm. Come in. Beatrice stepped inside carrying a wrapped plate. Sweet potato pie. I know you won't eat unless I bring it. Clara smiled weakly. You're not wrong. They sat together on a love seat that had seen better days. Beatrice watched her daughter for a long moment before speaking. He's bragging, isn't he? Clara looked down. I don't care what he says. I didn't ask if you cared. I asked if he's bragging. Clara nodded once. Beatrice sighed. He doesn't know what he's done. He thinks he's clever. Clara wiped her fingers on a napkin, voice low. He thinks I was just passing through his life. An ornament, something to hang on his perfect little world. You're not an ornament, Clara. You're a tree. Deep roots, real shade, and trees weather storms. There was another knock, firmer this time. Clara stood confused. It was nearly 10. She opened the door to find a tall figure in a flat cap, shoulders broad, hands worn from decades of work. Papa, she breathed. Silas Walsh stepped inside without a word. He looked at the painting, then at his daughter. His gaze lingered a moment longer than usual. Beatrice stood. "I'll leave you two." When the door closed again, silence settled between them. "He's proud of himself," Clara said. "I know. He won. Legally." Silas didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed the room to the painting and traced a finger just above the fracture line, not touching, just hovering. "Legality and justice aren't always siblings," he said. "Sometimes they don't even speak." Clara sank into her seat. "It's over. Let's just leave it there." Silas finally turned to her. His voice was calm. "You're pregnant. You were discarded. Publicly. That is not something I leave untouched." Her eyes flashed. "I don't want revenge. I'm not offering revenge," he said gently. "I'm offering restoration." She looked at him, something tightening in her chest. How Silas didn't answer. He simply reached into his coat and removed a small, leather-bound book. A ledger. Thick with names and dates. The edges worn. The binding clean. He placed it on the table between them. "Every suit I've ever made, I've recorded in here. Every favor done. Every trust built." Clara stared at it. "I measure men," Silas said. "Not just their shoulders, their character, their actions, what they build, and what they destroy." She said nothing. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You rest, you paint, that's your work now." He left the ledger on the table and walked toward the door. "Papa," she said. He paused, hand on the frame. "I don't need you to fight for me. I just need to feel like I matter." Silas turned, looked her square in the eye. You matter more than he ever understood. And that Clara May is where he made his first mistake. And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Outside, the wind carried the scent of old magnolias and slow justice. Inside, Clara sat with her hands on her belly, feeling a kick. And for the first time in weeks, she let herself believe that something better was coming. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The air in the tailor's shop was thick with steam and cedar oil. Bolts of fabric lined the walls like muted trophies, navy worsted wool, charcoal flannel, ivory silk. A record player in the corner spun a soft Ella Fitzgerald tune, the needle dragging slightly as it had for decades. The room felt timeless. Silas stood in the center, adjusting the lapel on a half-draped mannequin. The morning sun filtered through the tall, arched window, casting golden stripes across the work table. Every stitch on the jacket had meaning. Every fold intentional. Behind him, the front bell jingled. He didn't look up. "Good morning, Harrison." The man who stepped in was tall, silver-haired, his presence quiet but undeniable, like someone born into a family that once signed banknotes. He wore linen slacks and a pressed polo, the kind of casual that still cost a small fortune. "You always know it's me," Harrison said. Silas smiled faintly. "You have a rhythm to your walk. People reveal who they are in how they enter a room." Harrison stepped closer, his voice lowering. "I heard. Silas kept working." "From whom, Russell? He talks too much at the club." "And what did he say?" "That Marcus won? That he called your daughter sentimental and said you were just a man with thread and opinions?" Silas's hands paused only for a second. "Then he laughed about it," Harrison added. Silas turned slowly, pinning the lapel into place. "Did he laugh alone?" "No, but he will." There was a long silence between them. Harrison leaned on the counter. "You never asked for anything in 30 years of friendship. Not once." "I didn't sow favors," Silas said. "I sowed trust." "Do you want something now?" Silas met his eyes. "I want a delay." "On what, the riverfront zoning approval? There are holes in Marcus's application. Financial inconsistencies. He'll have to answer them." Harrison didn't blink. "And if he does, he won't. He's built an empire on appearances. That doesn't hold under scrutiny." Harrison gave a single slow nod. I'll have the committee request amended disclosures. Quietly. Always. Silas turned back to the mannequin. Before leaving, Harrison asked, "Does Clara know what you're doing?" "No." "Will she?" Silas didn't answer. Harrison left without another word. Outside, the day had fully arrived. Inside, Silas returned to the stitches. He wasn't crafting revenge. He was restoring balance, one thread at a time. 3 blocks away, Clara pushed open the gallery's side door, the familiar scent of linseed oil and raw canvas filling her lungs. Her new studio was modest, tucked behind a shared gallery space with high ceilings and exposed brick. But the light was perfect. Marianne Rains stood at the center, reviewing invoices on her tablet. "You're late," she said, without looking up. Clara dropped her keys in the metal tray. "I'm pregnant. I get a 15-minute grace period on everything." Marianne smirked. Fair enough. She walked over to the canvas Clara had been working on. "This is different. It's not finished. It's raw, honest." Clara folded her arms. "You make it sound like I used to lie." "No. But you used to decorate. Now you expose." Clara didn't reply. Marianne stepped back. "Are you still thinking about him?" "No," Clara said too quickly. "I'm thinking about the nursery I planned that never happened, the crib I sketched, the paint swatches I collected. All gone now." Marianne looked at her gently. "You don't need him to build a home." "You know that, right?" "I know," Clara said. But her eyes stayed fixed on the canvas. "I just didn't think he'd erase me so fast." Marianne walked to the window. "He didn't erase you. He revealed himself. And now everyone's watching." Clara furrowed her brow. "What do you mean?" "There's a whisper going around," Marianne said, "about the divorce. The gallery board, a few donors, even Raymond Sinclair's assistant. They're asking questions about how you were represented, about how quickly things were finalized." Clara's stomach tightened. "That wasn't supposed to be public." "Well, Marcus made it public," Marianne said. "He paraded the win. You didn't say a word." Clara shook her head. "I don't want to fight." "Maybe not," Marianne said, stepping close. "But people love a story. And right now yours is starting to sound like something worth believing in." Clara met her friend's eyes. "Don't make me a symbol." "I'm not," Marianne said. "But I am saying maybe it's time people saw what strength looks like when it's quiet." Clara was silent. Then, almost to herself, she said, "I miss being loved." Marianne softened. "Then let's start by helping you love yourself again." A knock came at the front. Clara wiped her hands and moved to the gallery entrance. The morning light spilled in as she opened the door. Standing there holding a paper bag from the bakery downstairs was Elijah Ramsey. He was tall, a bit awkward, with a quiet presence. Dark curls tucked under a baseball cap, a button-up shirt still dusted with flour. His family owned the bakery below, and they'd shared the building for months. "Morning," he said, shifting his weight. "Mom made peach biscuits. She said you liked them." Clara blinked. Yes? "I do." He handed her the bag, and his gaze lingered just long enough before dropping. "She also said if I don't eat one, I'm not invited to dinner." Clara smiled for the first time that morning. "Come in, I've got coffee." He stepped inside, nodding politely to Marianne. Elijah had been around, always kind, but distant. Never nosy, always respectful. He never asked about the bump, never offered pity. They sat at the back table coffee in mismatched mugs, silence folding around them comfortably. "These are really good," Clara said between bites. "I burned the first batch," he admitted. Marianne raised an eyebrow. "You brought her the second batch." "They're better," he said, then added, "I tested them." Clara laughed softly. Elijah looked around the studio. "You paint with light? That's rare?" Clara blinked. Excuse me, I bake. I notice textures, colors. Most artists trap light. You release it. Clara felt something she hadn't in a long time. A flush of being seen. I should let you work, he said, standing slowly. You can stay, she said quickly, if you want. He paused, then nodded. I'll just read, he said. You do your thing. Marianne raised an eyebrow at Clara but said nothing. As Elijah sat quietly with his book and Clara turned back to her canvas, something shifted in the room. Not romance. Not yet. But possibility. And after so much silence, that was everything. The morning haze hadn't lifted when Marcus Bellamy stepped into the foyer of his office tower, greeted by polished marble and the soft ping of the elevator bell. His assistant Cameron trailed behind him with a tablet and a list of back-to-back meetings. The zoning board wants to reschedule next week's hearing, Cameron said. Apparently there's been a delay in reviewing the documents. Marcus frowned. We submitted everything 2 weeks ago. I know, but call Harrison. I don't wait for committees. Cameron hesitated. Sir, he's not responding. He canceled his lunch with you this morning. Marcus stopped mid-stride. The lobby around him moved at its usual pace, lawyers with coffee architects in suits. But something shifted behind his eyes. A small, barely noticeable tick of recognition. He nodded slowly. All right, get me Russell. I already tried. He's in Charleston deposition. Back tomorrow. Marcus stepped into the elevator. The doors closed on Cameron's nervous expression. As the lift ascended, Marcus stared at his reflection in the chrome panel. He adjusted his tie, smoothed his hair. Everything was still in place. Wasn't it? Clara stood in front of the easel brush in hand eyes scanning the canvas, but not really seeing it. The morning sun had risen high enough to pour through the large gallery windows, bathing her studio in light. But her thoughts were somewhere else. Somewhere slower, quieter. Like the way Elijah had sat at the back table reading, as if silence wasn't something to be filled, but something to be shared. Beatrice's voice rang out from below. Clara May. Your lunch is getting cold, Clara called back. I'll be down in a second. She set the brush aside and walked to the kitchenette where her mother had laid out 2 plates, rosemary chicken and warm grain salad arranged like a southern bistro special. Beatrice poured sweet tea into 2 glasses, then sat. Her eyes studied Clara's face. What Clara asked. You've been quieter than usual. I'm painting. No, you're thinking. Clara sighed. He brought biscuits, peach ones. He didn't have to, and he stayed. Didn't speak much, just read. Beatrice smiled without looking up. Elijah Ramsey's always been that way. Watches everything. Talks when it matters. He's kind. He's a man raised by women who loved him right. That kind of quiet doesn't come from nowhere. Clara picked at her salad. I don't know if I'm ready. I'm not saying fall in love, Beatrice said. I'm saying maybe you've met someone who sees you without asking for anything back. That matters. Clara looked out the window toward the bakery's brick rooftop. I don't want to be a story he pities. Beatrice placed a warm hand on her daughter's. You're not a story. You're a chapter still being written. That afternoon, Silas stood in the back room of his shop holding a bolt of deep navy wool in his arms. It was thick, pure merino, the kind that whispered excellence without shouting it. He laid it out on the cutting table, then opened his leather-bound ledger. A knock at the back door broke the silence. He opened it to find Judge Ellen Carrington, dressed in her casual clothes linen pants and a cream blouse, but still carrying the weight of the bench. Ellen, he greeted. I was in the neighborhood, she said. Thought you might have a spare minute. Silas stepped aside. I always do for you. She entered, brushing a bit of dust from her sleeve. "You've been busy," she observed, eyeing the fabric and open book. "I've been thinking." She took a seat near the sewing machine. Word is Marcus Bellamy's zoning permit is stalling. Silas didn't confirm or deny. Ellen tilted her head. "I remember Clara at her first hearing, nervous apologetic, still defending him, even when he was clearly manipulating the financials." Silas's jaw tightened slightly. "I don't sit on the zoning board, Silas," she said, "but I do get their memos. I'm not asking for anything unethical. I didn't say you were." She paused. "Just wanted to remind you. Once a man starts falling, people don't help him stand back up if he pushed too many on his way up." Silas nodded quietly. Before she left, she turned back. "Your daughter, how is she holding up?" "She's finding herself," he said. "Brushstroke by brushstroke." The judge smiled. "Then maybe there's hope yet." Marcus poured a third espresso over ice, watching it swirl in his glass like a storm he could control. His corner office overlooked the river, and yet he felt boxed in. He scrolled through his phone, emails from investors polite but brief, a message from his accountant asking for clarification on offshore allocations. Unusual, and still nothing from Harrison Fielding. He tapped a finger against the desk. Then a call came through. Russell Marcus answered. "Don't panic," came the lawyer's voice. "Already did." "What's going on?" "There's a delay in the zoning board. Someone pulled old records, land surveys, tax filings. It's not fatal, but it's inconvenient." "Inconvenient," Marcus snapped. "My groundbreaking is in 3 weeks. There's more." "What, someone sent the Ledger Journal an anonymous tip?" Marcus sat up. A tip about the divorce. How it was handled. Names weren't mentioned, but details were. Intimate ones. Marcus's voice dropped. "You told me it was sealed." "It is. Legally. But legally and socially are two different animals." Marcus's knuckles turned white. "Who would leak that? I don't know. But if it picks up traction, it won't just be zoning delays. It'll be board questions. Donor withdrawals. Your public image isn't bulletproof." Marcus stood walking to the window. The city sprawled beneath him. Once his playground. Now, unfamiliar. "I want names," he said. "I want to know who's behind this." Russell hesitated. "Are you sure you want to dig? I built this life. No one takes it from me." The call ended. Outside, the sky began to darken, even though it wasn't yet dusk. Inside, Marcus felt the foundation shift just slightly. But it was enough. For the first time in years, the view from the top looked a little less permanent. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The gallery buzzed with soft conversation, gentle jazz, and the clinking of wine glasses. Clara stood near the back wall, her hands folded carefully over her belly. The exhibit was a local artist's showcase, something small but heartfelt, hosted monthly by the historic Savannah Art League. She hadn't planned on coming. But Marianne had insisted. "You can't keep painting in the shadows," her friend had said. "Let people see what healing looks like." So there she was, wearing a loose sage green dress, her hair tucked behind one ear, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. Her painting hung quietly between two louder pieces, a swirl of red and gold, on the left, a hyper-realist portrait of a woman's face on the right. But hers was different. It was called Inheritance. A single window cracked open, a breeze lifting a curtain, and in the distance a tailor's shears resting on a stool. It said everything and explained nothing. "Did you paint this recently?" The voice startled her, not because it was loud, but because it was him. Elijah stood just behind her, hands in his pockets. He was dressed simply slacks and a navy shirt sleeves rolled up. still smelling faintly of flower and citrus. She nodded. A few weeks ago? It's quiet, he said, but strong. Clara looked down, embarrassed. I'm still not sure what it means. I think you do. She looked up at him. Sometimes, he said, what we survive becomes what we pass on. There was something in the way he said it that made her chest tighten. She turned away, needing to breathe. I didn't think you'd come. My mother insisted, he said with a smile. She said, that girl's painting reminds me of your grandmother's windows. Clara laughed softly. That might be the best compliment I've ever gotten. A pause settled between them, one filled with something unspoken. Do you miss him? Elijah asked gently. Clara didn't respond right away. She stared at her painting. I miss the idea of him, she said. The man I thought he was. I miss the future we planned. The child's room we designed. The house that felt like home. Her voice caught for a second. But I don't miss being small. I don't miss walking on eggshells. I don't miss apologizing for my joy. Elijah nodded slowly. I think we sometimes confuse love with comfort, he said. But love should be breathable. Clara turned to him again. Why are you always like this? Like what kind? Careful. Like you see things others don't. He shrugged. Maybe because I've been the quiet one in the background most of my life. She held his gaze. That's not a bad place to be. I don't mind the background, he said. But I'm not afraid to step forward when it matters. Just then, Marianne appeared, with 2 glasses of sparkling cider. Look at you two, she said. Like a still life painting in real time. Clara rolled her eyes, taking a glass. Elijah smiled, ever polite. Marianne looked over her shoulder. Heads up. We've got a visitor. Clara followed her gaze. Marcus. He stood just inside the gallery doors, looking completely out of place in his tailored suit and impatient stance. His gaze swept the room until it landed on her. She stiffened. Elijah noticed immediately. Do you want me to stay? Yes, Clara said without hesitation. Marcus approached, ignoring Marianne, his eyes fixed on Clara like she was part of a business transaction he'd forgotten to close. I need to talk to you, he said, voice low. Now's not the time, Clara replied. He glanced at Elijah. Can we have a moment? She said, now's not the time. Elijah repeated his tone, calm but firm. Marcus studied him for a second, then turned back to Clara. You need to hear this. Things are complicated. Clara's hand instinctively rested on her belly. They've always been complicated, Marcus. You just stopped pretending to care. His jaw tensed. I made mistakes. She raised an eyebrow. That's generous. I didn't come here to argue. Then why are you here? Marcus looked down for the first time, faltering. There's some media attention on the divorce. Things I didn't want public are becoming public. I thought maybe you... She cut him off. Maybe I'd help you protect your image. He didn't answer. Clara took a breath. You once told me I was a detail in your life, a brush stroke, not the painting. Do you remember that Marcus looked like he wanted to deny it? But he didn't. I'm not a detail, Marcus. I was the frame, the foundation, and you threw it away. Elijah stood still beside her, not interfering, but present. Marcus's eyes flicked between them, the tension in his shoulders undeniable. This gallery, Clara said, voice steady, is a space for creation, for rebirth. You don't belong here anymore. He looked at her as if searching for the version of her he once controlled, but that woman was gone. He gave a stiff nod. If you change your mind, I won't. He turned and walked out the door, swinging shut behind him with a hush. Clara's chest heaved, but she didn't cry. Elijah handed her the glass she'd set down. "You didn't need me to stay," he said. "Maybe not," Clara replied, taking a slow sip. "But I'm glad you did." From across the room, Marianne gave a silent nod, her expression unreadable. Later, as the gallery emptied and the lights dimmed, Clara sat on a wooden bench in front of Inheritance. Elijah sat beside her. "You handled that with grace," he said. She looked at the painting, then at him. "I used to think strength was loud," she said. "But maybe it's measured," he smiled. "Like a good recipe," he said. "Or a tailored suit," she added. They sat together in silence, not needing anything more. Outside, the Savannah night wrapped itself around the streets like a warm shawl. Inside, Clara's world, for the first time in a long time, felt stitched back together one thread at a time. The next morning came quietly. Rain pattered against the wide windows of the tailor shop as Silas pressed a clean crease into a navy trouser leg. The steam hissed from the iron, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. The encounter at the gallery had reached him by sundown. Savannah may be a city of grace and manners, but nothing stayed private long. The whispers had already started Marcus Bellamy showing up uninvited, making a scene, looking desperate. Silas set the iron down and exhaled slowly. He pulled open the drawer beneath the counter and laid his hands on the worn leather of the ledger. His fingers hovered above it for a moment before turning to a fresh page. He wrote a name, and beside it, in small, deliberate script, beginning to unravel. A soft knock broke his focus. The shop door creaked open. Harrison Fielding entered, umbrella dripping at his side, silver hair, damp suit collar raised against the storm. "You've been busy," he said. "I hear you canceled lunch," Silas replied. Harrison gave a tired nod. "Figured Marcus wouldn't know what to do if I didn't show. Let him feel it." Silas motioned to the chair, and Harrison sat slowly, setting the umbrella beside him. "There's talk," he said. "Not just about the divorce. Investors are skittish. His Cayman funds are being questioned. Nothing illegal on paper, but the perception's turning." Silas folded the trousers with precision. "People forget. Reputation is a currency. Do you want him ruined, Silas?" "No," Silas said, meeting Harrison's gaze. "I want him revealed." Harrison leaned back, his face unreadable. "You know what you're doing. I measure men," Silas said quietly. "That includes the ones my daughter trusted." Clara stood by the window of her studio, watching the rain streak down the glass. The gallery was closed today. Mondays were her quiet, her day to think, to breathe. She hadn't heard from Marcus since the night at the exhibit, and strangely, she hadn't expected to. But Elijah, he'd texted that morning. Just 3 words. "Biscuits, 3 p.m. yours." She smiled in spite of herself. She hadn't answered yet. Part of her didn't want to seem eager. The other part wasn't sure what this was. The doorbell chimed. She turned. To her surprise, it wasn't Elijah. Marianne stepped inside, shaking off a wet umbrella and holding a folder under her arm. "Bad timing?" she asked. "Never." They sat near the work table, rain tapping on the windows like a soft metronome. Marianne opened the folder. "You need to see something." Clara's smile faded as she scanned the documents. "What is this Marcus's development filings? Specifically his zoning application for the riverfront project." Clara's brow furrowed. "Why would I care about this? Because it lists shared marital assets as collateral for the primary loan." Clara looked up sharply. But he told the court the riverfront project was entirely post-separation, solely funded through his private accounts. Marianne nodded. And yet, here we are. Clara felt the old swirl of nausea, familiar, suffocating. He lied under oath, he manipulated. But yes, she set the papers down. I thought it was over. Marianne leaned forward. Do you want it to be? Clara hesitated. I want peace, but I don't want to be erased. Marianne sat back, folding her hands. There's a difference between moving on and letting someone rewrite the story. The rain softened. I don't know if I'm strong enough for another round, Clara whispered. You don't have to fight him, Marianne said. You just have to stand in truth, that's all. Clara closed her eyes. I'll think about it. By 3 o'clock, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Clara opened her studio door just as Elijah raised his hand to knock. I was about to leave, he said, holding up a small paper bag. You're 5 minutes early. You're 3 minutes late. She laughed, stepping aside. Come in. They sat with tea and the still warm biscuits, peach again. The smell was somehow more comforting than anything else she'd felt all day. You all right? He asked. She hesitated. I found out Marcus may have included my name, my assets in one of his financial filings after everything was signed. Elijah said nothing, just listened. I thought I was free, she said, almost to herself. But he's still living off the ghost of what we had. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then maybe it's time you take that story back. She looked at him. You sound like Marianne. She's smart, he said, but she doesn't bake. Clara smiled. You always do that. What pulled the tension out of the room? Like you find the knot and just untie it. He looked down for a moment, shy. I like seeing you calm, he said. She studied him. Elijah, what is this? He met her eyes. I don't know, he said, but I think it's something honest and slow and built for real life. Her breath caught slightly. She glanced at the rain-spotted window, then back to him. Can something good grow out of something broken? He nodded. Sometimes that's the only place good things grow. There was a pause. Heavy, soft, meaningful. And then her phone buzzed. She looked down. Blocked number. A voicemail came through. She played it on speaker before she could think twice. It was Marcus, his voice low, tight. Clara. Something's happening. Sinclair's pulling out of the riverfront deal. I don't know who you talked to, but this is spiraling. If there's anything left between us that matters, call me back. Please. The voicemail ended. Elijah's expression didn't change. Clara exhaled. He's grasping now. Elijah waited a beat before speaking. You okay? She nodded slowly. I think so, but her eyes drifted to the window again. Not afraid, not angry, resolute. Something had shifted. Marcus wasn't unraveling because she pulled a thread. He was unraveling because, for the first time, no one was stitching him back together. The walls of Silas Walsh's tailor shop held more secrets than stitches. Early afternoon sunlight filtered through the front windows, catching particles of chalk dust floating like tiny memories in the air. The sewing machine sat quiet today. No clients, no fittings. Just Silas at his drafting table, a cup of coffee going cold beside him, and a letter from Raymond Sinclair resting open under the weight of a brass measuring tape. He read it again. A formal notice of withdrawal from the riverfront redevelopment project. No apology, just a line. We believe this partnership no longer reflects our institutional values. It was precisely the kind of note a man like Marcus Bellamy wouldn't just fear he'd crumble under. Silas picked up his pen, slowly turned to the next clean page in his ledger, and made a single notation: Sinclair debt repaid. He leaned back, pressing his fingertips together under his chin. One more thread pulled. A soft knock at the side door. He opened it to find Beatrice raincoat in hand, cheeks flushed. "I brought the spice cake Clara likes," she said, stepping inside. Silas raised an eyebrow. "She seemed fine yesterday." Beatrice set the cake on the counter. "She's fine, but a mother never shows up just for cake." He waited. Beatrice folded her hands. "She likes the Ramsey boy." Silas's brow twitched. "Elijah," she said. "The baker. He's been spending time at the studio." Silas returned to the table. "I know. You know she talks about him differently," he said. "Like she's not afraid of being seen." Beatrice exhaled softly. "Do you think she's ready? No one's ever ready for something real," Silas said. "But if she's healing, I won't stand in its way." Beatrice looked down. Marcus left a voicemail. Sounded shaky. "He's unraveling. You're sure this is the way?" Silas paused, then looked her in the eye. "This isn't revenge. It's restoration." Marcus sat in his office, blinds drawn, 2 phones on the desk, and an untouched sandwich going stale beside a stack of loan documents. He'd barely slept. His eyes were sunken hair, less perfectly combed than usual. The calls to Harrison had gone unanswered. Sinclair was officially gone. And the press had started sniffing around, asking subtle, pointed questions about asset filings, ethics, disclosures, timelines. The walls weren't crashing in, they were receding. He dialed Russell Pierce again. "I need you to get ahead of this," Marcus said as soon as he answered. "Someone is targeting me." Russell exhaled. "You think I don't know that? Then do something." "I did. I ran a full financial sweep." "Marcus, you're over-leveraged. You moved assets under Clara's name to protect them from the divorce, then claimed them as private on the permit filings. That's fraud. Even if no one proves it, perception is damage. They don't need a smoking gun. They just need doubt." Marcus stood pacing. "This can't be traced back to Clara. She doesn't have that kind of influence." "No," Russell said slowly. "But someone close to her might." The line went silent. Then Marcus asked, almost in a whisper, "Her father, he's a tailor, right?" "Yes. And half the men on every city board wear his suits." Russell was quiet. Marcus stared at the window. "He's not fighting me with lawyers. He's using his name." Clara sat on the floor of her studio, legs crossed, brush in one hand, paint streaked across her arm. The canvas in front of her was more abstract than usual blues and ochres, bending into one another, no clear form yet. But it was honest. She heard the familiar footstep before the knock. "Come in," she called. Elijah stepped through the door holding a paper bag with a cautious smile. "I brought sandwiches. Still warm." She stood slowly. "You're spoiling me. I like watching you eat something that isn't tea and half a biscuit." They sat by the windows, sharing lunch in silence. After a moment, he said, "I saw the ledger this morning." Clara stilled. "What did it say?" "Nothing detailed. Just concerns around zoning, potential misrepresentation of marital assets." Subtle, but loud enough. Clara sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't want it like this," she said. "Public. Messy. I just wanted it to be over." He studied her for a moment. "It will be, and you'll still be standing." She looked at him. "And if it gets worse, if people talk, if it pulls my family into it." He didn't flinch. "Then you stand taller, and you let them talk." Her eyes filled for a moment, but she blinked it away. "You always know the right thing to say." "I don't," he said. "I just know when silence won't help." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else." She tilted her head. "My sister's getting married next month, out in Beaufort. My mom asked if I'd bring someone. I told her I might." Clara's heart jumped. He looked nervous. No pressure. Just if you wanted to. A day away. Somewhere quiet. She stared at him. You want to introduce me to your family? I want to share a part of my world with someone who makes it better. She smiled. Warm, steady. I'd like that. They sat in silence, both aware that something had shifted again. Not a leap, just another thread quietly stitching something new. Outside, the rain returned in soft rhythm. But inside the studio, the air felt clear. Safe. And through the window behind the brush strokes and silence, Clara began to believe in a future that hadn't been planned for her, but one she might choose freely. The low hum of the sewing machine filled the shop, rhythmic and steady. Silas guided a dark thread through a dense fabric, pausing only to adjust the tension, his hands precise from decades of quiet mastery. Rain ticked against the window, the kind that lasted all day without drama, just enough to make the streets glisten and the world slow down. He wasn't thinking about stitches. He was thinking about Clara and Marcus, and the press that, despite its restraint, had started circling closer to the truth. The bell above the door jingled, breaking his concentration. It wasn't a client. It was Marcus, drenched in a fine wool suit that didn't suit the weather or the man wearing it. Marcus stepped inside, his expression tense but controlled. I figured you'd come, Silas said, not rising from his bench. Marcus glanced around, taking in the tailored silence of the room. This was always your fortress, wasn't it? He said. You built a world in here, stitched your reputation into every man in this city. Silas didn't respond. He simply clipped the thread and set the jacket aside. Marcus took a slow step forward. Clara's painting again. I saw her piece in the exhibit. She is, Silas said. I never stopped caring about her. Silas finally looked up. You stopped knowing how. That hit deeper than Marcus expected. His mouth opened, then closed again. He regrouped. I came because I think we're past the point of pride. I think things are happening that I can't explain. You mean consequences? Silas said. Marcus shook his head. No, this is orchestrated, timed, everything unraveling at once. Silas stood. He walked around the bench, slow and calm, and stopped in front of Marcus. You built your world with borrowed bricks, son. Borrowed charm, borrowed trust. But nothing you took, you earned. Marcus didn't flinch. Are you doing this? Silas's expression didn't change. No, I'm just no longer holding the ladder you climbed. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Marcus's voice, quieter, said, I know you never liked me. That's not true, Silas replied. I hoped you'd grow into the man you pretended to be. You didn't. Marcus looked away. She's with someone, he said. Silas's eyes narrowed. She's not yours to keep track of anymore. Marcus's jaw tightened. This man, the baker, he's nothing like me. Exactly, Silas said. Marcus took a shallow breath. I didn't come here to beg. Good, Silas said, because there's nothing here for you. The bell above the door chimed again. Clara. She stepped in, umbrella in hand, cheeks pink from the wind. She froze when she saw Marcus. Silas stepped back without a word, retreating to the workbench. Clara, Marcus said. I didn't know you'd be here. She closed the door gently behind her. I needed a hemagist, she said to her father, not looking at Marcus. Silas nodded and took the coat from her arms. Marcus took a step forward. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. Clara looked at her father. He gave her a small nod and moved into the back room. She turned to Marcus. You have 3. He tried to read her face, but found nothing left to negotiate. You heard the voicemail, he said. You know things are shifting. And I think someone's trying to destroy me. I'm not, she said plainly, if that's what you're asking. I didn't mean, yes, you did, she cut in. But it doesn't matter. You created this. You burned through people, Marcus. Through loyalty. Through truth. Now you want help, I want clarity. She tilted her head. Now, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. Do you really think the bakery boy understands you? Do you think he can hold space for the woman you really are? She blinked, then stepped back. You still don't see it, she said. That's why it's all falling apart. He said nothing. I never needed someone to fix me, she continued. I needed someone who wouldn't break me to begin with. Her voice caught, not with pain, but with finality. You have everything you asked for, she said. You won the divorce, you paraded it. Now hold. Marcus looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Not the woman he had shaped, the woman who had shaped herself without him. He gave a slow, bitter nod, then walked past her, leaving the shop with nothing in his hands. The bell jingled again as the door shut behind him. Silas returned holding the coat, now pressed and ready. Clara reached for it. Their hands touched. I saw the look in your eyes, he said gently. I'm not afraid of him anymore, she replied. Silas studied her. No, but you used to love him. She nodded. And that's what makes it hard. He didn't say anything else, just held her hand a moment longer. That evening, Clara sat by the window of her studio, sketching softly on the corner of a canvas, her pencil whispering across the surface. Elijah knocked and let himself in. You okay? He asked. She nodded. Ran into the past today. He sat beside her. She didn't explain further. I don't want to compare, she said after a while. I don't want to carry him into this. You're not, Elijah said. You're leaving him exactly where he belongs. She looked at him. Where is that? Elijah reached over and closed the sketchbook gently. Behind you. And for the first time, she believed that might be true. Clara stood barefoot on the studio's wooden floor, one hand resting on the swell of her stomach, the other still holding the phone, though the call had ended several minutes ago. The silence felt thick, final. The call had been from her lawyer. The zoning board had officially flagged Marcus's riverfront project for review. A public inquiry was scheduled. Quiet but serious. It meant questions, subpoenas, reputational damage. It also meant her name might resurface, not as a victim, but as a ghost in the margins of Marcus's empire. She reached for the edge of the table to steady herself, her breath shallow. A quiet knock at the door pulled her back to the present. Elijah, she called. But when she opened the door, it wasn't him. It was Lila Hammond. Clara blinked. Lila was one of the city's newer council members, young, sharp, and always one step ahead of every meeting agenda. Clara hadn't seen her in over a year, not since the arts grant ceremony, where they'd shared champagne and traded hopeful smiles. I'm sorry to drop in, Lila said, her raincoat clinging to her frame. But I thought this would be better, face to face. Come in, Clara said, stepping aside, her voice uncertain. Lila walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the studio with a kind of reverent quiet. I forgot how peaceful it is here, she said. Clara waited. Lila turned, her expression softening. They're going to call you to testify. Clara exhaled, barely audibly. Under oath, yes. They want clarity on when the riverfront project was conceived. If funds were commingled, if your name was used post-divorce. Clara's stomach tightened. I signed everything. I walked away clean. Lila stepped forward. I believe you. But the public process doesn't run on belief. It runs on documentation. And Marcus, he's left gaps. I don't want to be dragged through this again. I know. Clara looked down, blinking fast. I'm trying to start over. Lila was quiet for a moment. You're not being punished. You're being invited to tell the truth. And sometimes, the truth frees more than just one person. That hung in the air. I can't promise it won't hurt, Lila added. But I can promise it'll matter. Clara nodded, her voice thin. Thank you. Lila gave her a long look, one of respect, not pity, then let herself out. Clara closed the door gently behind her, leaned against it, and let the quiet come. It was happening. The past was no longer just behind her. It was circling, closing. But maybe she was ready to face it. That evening, Elijah found her standing in the garden behind the studio, shoes off the soil, cool beneath her feet. The sky was dipped in deep coral, fading into violet at the edges. She didn't turn when she heard him approach. I thought I might find you here, he said. I needed air. He stood beside her for a moment, not speaking. Then, you heard? She nodded. They want me to testify. He looked at her, waiting. I'm scared, she whispered. Not of him, of the scrutiny, of being the story again. You're not the story, Elijah said. You're the one writing it now. She turned to him, eyes glassy but steady. I'm tired of being careful, of tiptoeing around other people's narratives. Then don't, he said. A pause. I want you to come to the wedding, he added. Even if things get messy here, I want you there. Clara blinked. Even now, especially now. She searched his face, looking for hesitation. There was none. You're not afraid to stand next to someone who's being looked at sideways. No, he said, because I see you clearly. Clara reached for his hand. I don't know how this ends, she said. That's the thing, Elijah replied. You don't have to. You just have to show up. They stood in the darkening garden, the first stars emerging above them. And for the first time, Clara didn't feel like she was running from something. She felt like she was standing in something real, grounded, maybe even sacred. Back at the tailor shop, Silas stood by the window watching the streetlights flicker on. The news had broken an hour ago. The inquiry was front-page material now. His name wasn't in it, but Marcus's was. He heard footsteps behind him. Beatrice entered quietly, a steaming mug in each hand. You saw it? She asked. He nodded. She's being called. Beatrice handed him a mug. She'll tell the truth. I know. You're worried it won't be enough. He took a sip, then answered. I'm worried about how much it will cost her. Beatrice moved closer, her voice low. She's stronger than you think. She's my daughter, he said. Of course she is. He set the mug down and returned to his bench, the fabric waiting for him. But his hands lingered in the air. Not out of hesitation, out of hope. That maybe this time the truth wouldn't just tear things down. It might build something new. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and lemon polish. Clara stood just inside the hearing room, her fingers laced tightly together in front of her. The soft hum of low voices around her only added to the pressure in her chest. The riverfront zoning inquiry wasn't a trial, but it felt like one. Rows of wooden benches held city officials, lawyers, journalists, and a few spectators curious enough to follow the whispers in the news. Savannah wasn't New York reputation meant something here. Silence, too. Elijah sat in the second row, his eyes never leaving her. Not protective, just present. She hadn't asked him to come. She hadn't needed to. He just did. Marianne was beside him, her jaw set a stack of carefully highlighted documents in her lap. Every detail Clara had tried to forget, Marianne had preserved like evidence in a sealed vault, ready when needed. And now it was needed. Across the room, Marcus sat next to his attorney, his suit tailored a little too sharp for the gravity of the day. He looked calm, polished, but his fingers tapped steadily against his knee. Clara didn't need to see his face to read him. She knew his rhythms too well. A name was called, then another, then hers. She walked to the front, sat in the lone witness chair, and placed her hands gently on the edge of the table. Her heart thudded behind her ribs, loud and slow, like someone knocking from the inside. The lead counsel looked over his glasses. Ms. Walsh, thank you for coming in today. Just to clarify, you are the former spouse of Mr. Marcus Bellamy. Is that correct? Yes, she said, her voice steady. You were married from 2017 to 2023. Yes. And during that time, were you made aware of any projects Marcus Bellamy was undertaking involving the Riverfront District A pause? She glanced briefly at Marcus, then back at the counsel. He mentioned interest in a redevelopment project in late 2022. He said he had partners. He was vague. Did he ever indicate that any joint assets, yours or marital, were being used as collateral or contributions to that project? Yes, she said, her voice clear. In early 2023, I noticed our shared trust was being drawn from. When I asked him, he said it was temporary and that it would be replaced before any paperwork was filed. I believed him. And after the divorce, I signed a final division of assets. I assumed everything had been settled. I had no idea my name had remained on anything related to the project. There was a murmur in the gallery. Not loud, but noticeable. The counsel nodded, jotting something down. Did you benefit in any way financially or otherwise from the riverfront development? No, Clara said. Not a dollar? Not a square foot? The questioning continued for another 20 minutes. Each answer peeling back a layer Marcus had carefully painted over. Her voice never wavered. She told the truth not to accuse, but to release. When it was over, the counsel thanked her and dismissed her from the witness seat. As she stood to return to her seat, Marcus rose slightly, as if to say something, but she walked past him without pause. The silence in the room wrapped around her like armor. Later, in the quiet echo of the courthouse steps, Clara stood facing the open sky. The air was warm, but forgiving, the first real breath she'd taken all day. Elijah stood beside her, his hand brushing gently against hers. You did more than survive that, he said. I didn't want to hurt him, she murmured. I don't think you did, Elijah said. You just refused to cover for him. She looked at him. Is that the same thing? He smiled gently. No. One's punishment. The other is truth. She nodded slowly, staring at the horizon. People were watching me, she said. And I wasn't embarrassed? Of course not, he replied. I was proud. They stood in silence for a while, letting the moment settle. Then Elijah asked, You still want to come to the wedding next week? Might be good to leave town. Get air from somewhere else. Clara hesitated. I do. She looked down at her stomach, resting her hand softly over it. I want to feel new again. You already are. For Torhans. Marcus sat alone in his office that night. The walls, once decorated with magazine covers and framed accolades, now looked hollow. The headlines weren't brutal yet, but they were circling, creeping. He poured a drink he didn't really want, stared out at the night skyline of Savannah, and replayed Clara's testimony in his mind. She hadn't humiliated him. She'd exposed the version of him he worked hardest to hide. And worse, she hadn't looked back. His phone buzzed with a message from Russell. Sinclair's official. They've pulled all project funding. The board is considering censure. He didn't reply. He simply leaned back, glass in hand, and let the silence rise around him like tide water. There were no more ladders, no more handshakes that shielded him. He was alone with the truth now, and for the first time he didn't know how to spin it. The morning before the wedding felt oddly still. Clara stood at her bedroom window, a suitcase open on the bed behind her, half-packed. Sunlight poured over the garden outside, gold and soft. Beatrice had trimmed the roses that morning, leaving their fragrance thick in the air. But Clara wasn't watching the roses. She was staring at the silence. It had been 3 days since the hearing. 3 days of silence from Marcus. 3 days of measured praise from strangers in the grocery store, emails from former clients and fellow artists, small ripples of support sent gently her way. She appreciated them. But what stayed with her more was something Silas had said over dinner the night before. Truth doesn't finish the story, he'd told her. It starts a better one. She hadn't replied then, but she understood now. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. A text from Elijah. "Leaving in 30. Breakfast stop on the way. Hungry." She smiled. Always. The drive to Beaufort wound through stretches of moss-draped trees and sunlight-speckled back roads. Elijah drove with one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally tapping the rhythm of the music playing low through the speakers. Clara leaned her head against the window, the cool glass calming her thoughts. "You quiet?" he asked, glancing at her. "Just taking it in." "You sure you're okay with this?" he asked. "Family questions matching outfits." She laughed softly. "I've survived worse." He grinned. "Good, because Aunt Rochelle doesn't hold back." They reached the coastal town just before noon. Elijah's family home, an old white clapboard house with green shutters and creaky steps, stood like a memory waiting to be revisited. His mother, Lorraine, met them on the porch. "Clara," she said warmly, arms already outstretched. "We've heard all about you." "Welcome, honey." Clara melted into the hug. "Thank you for having me." Lorraine pulled back, giving her a once-over with soft eyes. "You're even prettier than Elijah said." Elijah cleared his throat behind them. "Mom, what I'm old, not blind." Inside the house buzzed with activity. Cousins running a dog, barking somewhere in the yard, music echoing faintly from the back patio. Clara's nerves were immediately wrapped in warmth, if not a little chaos. By afternoon, she and Elijah sat under a canopy of oaks with lemonade, watching the rehearsal from a distance. "You grew up in this," she said. "Loud, messy, loving. I didn't know this kind of family was real." He looked at her. "It's real, and it's yours now if you want it." She was quiet for a beat. Then softly, "I think I do." Later that evening, while Elijah was helping set up lights in the backyard, Clara wandered into the kitchen. Lorraine stood at the stove, humming. "I can help," Clara offered. "You can keep me company," Lorraine said, smiling. "You've done plenty today." Clara poured herself a glass of water, watching as Lorraine stirred a pot. "You raised him well," she said. "He taught me as much as I taught him," Lorraine replied. "Especially after his father passed." Clara turned toward her. "I didn't know. He was 12. Grew up fast. But he never stopped being gentle." There was a long pause, then Lorraine asked, "May I say something?" "Delicate?" Clara nodded. "I know a bit about your past." Elijah didn't gossip, but people talk. Clara held her breath. "I just want you to know," Lorraine said gently, "whatever pain you've carried, it doesn't make you less. It makes you real. And real is what we love in this family." Clara blinked quickly, fighting the heat in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. Lorraine placed a soft hand on her arm. "I hope you stay." Clara smiled, deeply, moved. Me too. That night after the rehearsal dinner and 100 introductions, Clara stood alone on the wraparound porch, the salty air brushing her skin. She stared out toward the marsh moonlight catching on the water's edge. She heard footsteps behind her. Elijah joined her, leaning against the railing. "They all love you," he said. "I don't know how to respond to that," she admitted. "Just say you love them back, or that you're open to trying." She nodded slowly. "I had a strange thought tonight," she said. "Tell me." "I think this was always possible. A different life. A real one. I just didn't know where to look." He slipped his fingers between hers. "Sometimes we're too close to the wrong thing to see the right one standing still." They stood together in the quiet, the porch creaking softly beneath them. "Tomorrow's going to be beautiful," she said. "It already is." Clara leaned into his shoulder, a slow breath filling her chest. The old life was behind her, and for the first time, it stayed there. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and windless, the kind of still air that made everything feel like it was holding its breath. Clara stepped into the guest room's bathroom, sunlight flooding the counter as she brushed her hair back into a low knot. Her dress was simple cream linen, soft at the edges and loose around her belly. It wasn't meant to draw attention, just to feel like her. From the hallway, she heard Elijah laughing with his younger cousins, his voice warm and steady, the sound wrapping around her like a safety net. She smiled to herself, pressing a hand gently against the small curve of her stomach. The baby kicked once, gently, like a nod. "I know," she whispered. "We're okay." Downstairs, the wedding prep was in full swing. Folding chairs lined the backyard, ribbons tied to oak branches, sunlight catching the glass lanterns strung overhead. It wasn't extravagant. It was beautiful, because it felt honest, like everything here had a soul. Clara stepped onto the porch just as Lorraine emerged from the kitchen with a tray of tea. "There you are," Lorraine said, setting the tray down. "You're glowing." Clara smiled. "I don't know if that's me or the humidity." They both laughed, and then Lorraine leaned in, her voice softer. "Elijah told me you're going back to Savannah tomorrow." Clara nodded. "Just for a few days. I have to finalize the studio reopening, and I have a meeting with someone from the Historical Arts Trust. Oh, they want to fund a new collection, based on the riverfront. Not the politics, the people, the stories that got buried under concrete and permits." Lorraine reached out and took her hand. "That's important work, honey." Clara looked away for a moment. "It feels like I'm stepping into something I didn't know I could carry." "You are?" Lorraine said. "But you're ready." The ceremony was small, just family. The bride's voice trembled during her vows. The groom wept halfway through his. By the time they kissed, even the dog barked as if on cue. Clara stood with Elijah near the back, their hands entwined. He leaned in. "You're thinking about it, about what it'd be like to get married again." She looked up at him. "Are you?" He shrugged, playful. "Maybe." She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't even flinch when my name was splashed across every paper in Savannah. You think I'm the kind of man who flinches?" Clara smiled. "No, that's why you scare me." Elijah's expression softened. "I'd rather you trust me." "I do," she said. "That's why I'm scared." That evening, back at the tailor shop, Silas stood at his workbench under a dim lamp, his hands methodically pressing seams. The shop was closed, but he hadn't gone home. Not yet. The door opened. He didn't look up. "We're not open." A voice answered quietly. "I'm not here for a suit." Silas paused, then looked up. Marcus stood near the door, his tie loose, his hair messier than usual. Not put together, not undone, just afraid. I heard about the hearing, he said. Silas said nothing. I thought you should know I'm stepping back. The riverfront project, the board, all of it. Silas watched him. I'm not doing it for Clara, Marcus added. Or to look good. I just realized I was building a world where I never had to be honest. And it broke. Silas exhaled slowly. And what now? Marcus stepped forward. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like to ask for something smaller. Silas raised an eyebrow. When the baby's born, Marcus said I'd like to send a letter. Not show up. Not disrupt anything, just something for the child to read one day, so they know I tried to become someone worth knowing. Silas didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. One letter. Marcus breathed out, his eyes shining. And I'll have it read first, Silas said. If it's not clean, it won't pass. Marcus managed to smile. Fair. He turned to go, then stopped at the door. Clara doesn't owe me anything. But you, Silas, held up a hand. You had your turn, he said quietly. She's building hers now. Marcus gave a quiet nod, then left the bell above the door ringing like a gentle goodbye. Silas stood for a long time before returning to his bench. One life was closing. Another had just begun. Savannah's air had changed. Not just in the weather, though, the humidity had softened, and the breeze carried the faintest whisper of jasmine, but in Clara's bones. She could feel it in the rhythm of her mornings. Her steps no longer echoed like questions. They landed like answers. She stood inside her newly reopened studio, staring at a blank canvas mounted on the far wall. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting gold across the floorboards. It was the first time she'd stood in front of a canvas since the hearing, since the wedding, since her name stopped meaning what it used to. Behind her, music played low from the radio, a vinyl crackle beneath the melody. The scent of fresh paint and old wood wrapped around her like memory. Elijah arrived with coffee and 2 croissants, wrapped in parchment and still warm. He didn't say anything at first, just handed her the cup and leaned against the doorframe watching her. She took a sip. You always know when to show up. He smiled. You always look like you're about to paint the truth. Clara looked back at the canvas. I think I am. He nodded toward the work table near the window. I brought the letter. Her stomach fluttered. She set her cup down. You read it? She asked. I did, Elijah said. Twice. And he crossed the room and handed her the sealed envelope. It's not a plea. It's not even an apology. Then what is it? A man trying to leave something decent behind. Clara stared at the envelope for a long moment. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she set it gently beside her brushes. Maybe one day, she whispered. They stood in silence for a while. Then Elijah leaned in and kissed her forehead. You ready for the gala tonight? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. The Historical Arts Trust Gala was held in a restored mansion overlooking the river, its white columns glowing against the indigo sky. Clara stood near the back of the gallery, her hand resting softly on her stomach, which had grown noticeably in the past few weeks. Her painting hung in the center of the room. 6 feet tall, bold, and textured, an abstract piece that told no literal story, yet somehow said everything. She'd called it inheritance, not because of what she'd received, but because of what she chose to carry forward. As guests wandered the space, pausing in front of her work, Clara caught snatches of conversation words like powerful, honest, unfamiliar, magnetic. A few turned and looked at her, their expressions soft with recognition. Lila Hammond approached, dressed in navy and confidence. You made waves tonight, she said, nodding towards the painting. I was hoping more for a ripple, Clara replied. Too late. They shared a quiet laugh. You're opening something here, Lila said. Something that's going to last. Clara glanced at the painting. I didn't paint for permanence. You painted for truth. That's what lasts. Across the room, Silas stood with Beatrice, his hand tucked neatly into hers. He wore a charcoal suit, pressed, of course, with a boutonniere Clara had given him that afternoon. A single sprig of lavender. He caught her eye from across the gallery and gave a small nod. That was all she needed. A few minutes later, as the evening unfolded with quiet speeches and clinking glasses, Elijah took her hand. Walk with me, he said. They stepped out onto the veranda, the air warm but calm. The sound of the river below murmured like an old story retold. Clara turned toward him. I don't know how all of this happened. Yes, you do, he said. You just don't want to admit you earned it. She smiled. Some days I still expect it to vanish. It won't. He brushed a hand against her cheek. I don't want to lose this, she said quietly. Any of it. You, the baby, this peace. You're not losing anything, he said. You're building it. She stepped closer, resting her head against his chest. I used to think survival was the same as strength, she said. Now I know better. Survival is silence. Strength is speaking. And you did. A beat passed. Then she looked up at him, eyes filled with a kind of certainty she hadn't felt in years. Elijah. Yes, when this baby comes, I want them to know love first, not fear, not proving, just love. They will, he said, because that's all you've given since the day I met you. She leaned into him, their silhouettes framed by moonlight and promise. Inside, her painting hung on the wall. Outside, her life waited unfinished, beautiful hers. The savannah sky was an overcast watercolor soft grays bleeding into pale blue, the air holding its breath like it knew something was coming. Clara stood in the middle of the nursery, one hand resting on the edge of the crib Silas had built. She ran her fingers across the grain of the wood, tracing every groove, every careful joint. It smelled like cedar and lavender the way her childhood had. The way love always should. The room was nearly finished. Elijah had painted the walls the softest green like the underside of a magnolia leaf. Beatrice had sewn the curtains by hand. There were stacks of children's books, folded baby blankets, and a wooden mobile shaped like crescent moons and stars hanging above the crib. But what struck Clara most was the silence. The good kind. The peaceful kind. She pressed a hand to her stomach, now full and heavy with life, and whispered, "We're almost ready." From the hallway, footsteps approached. Then Elijah's voice, gentle. "You should see the look on your face." She turned, smiling. "I didn't hear you come in. I've been watching you for a minute. You looked like you were praying." "I think I was," she said, without words. He stepped closer, leaned down, and kissed her forehead. "It's beautiful. You made this whole life feel like home." Clara took a deep breath and looked around the room. "I keep waiting for something to ruin it," she admitted. Elijah's expression didn't shift, but his voice dropped a little. "What makes you say that?" "Because for so long, every good thing had a thread of warning stitched through it. Like if I got too comfortable, it would be taken away." He nodded. "That makes sense. But lately," she hesitated, "I feel like I've rewritten that thread." He wrapped his arms around her from behind his hands, resting just above her belly. "You didn't just rewrite it," he said softly. "You cut it clean and started something new." She leaned into him, eyes closing. Then the doorbell rang. Elijah pulled back slowly. "I'll get it," Clara stayed in the nursery, tracing the edge of the mobile with one finger as the sounds from the front hall filtered in a soft conversation, Elijah's voice low and calm. Then a moment later, he returned. His expression was unreadable, but his tone was gentle. "It's a courier," he said. "There's something for you." Clara tilted her head. "From who?" Elijah paused. "Your father." She blinked. "Silas?" He nodded. "He didn't want to hand it to you himself. He said you'd know when to open it." He held out a small box, beautifully wrapped in brown paper tied with twine. Clara took it in her hands, feeling the weight of it, not heavy, but dense. Important. She sat on the edge of the bed in the nursery and slowly untied the twine. Inside the box was a folded piece of cream stationery and a small, dark blue velvet pouch. She opened the letter first. "My Clara, when I first held you in my arms, I made a promise to protect you quietly, completely, without ever asking for anything in return. I thought that meant shielding you from the world. But I was wrong. What it meant was trusting that one day you'd become stronger than the things that tried to silence you. And you did. This belonged to your mother. She wore it on the day we brought you home. I think it belongs with you now, so that when your child enters this world, they'll come into a lineage not just of survival, but of grace. I love you always." Dad Clara stared at the letter for a long time before reaching into the velvet pouch. Inside was a delicate gold locket, small, oval, and warm from the sun that had touched it through the window. She opened it slowly. Inside was a faded photo of her mother smiling at something just outside the frame. And on the other side, a tiny photo of Clara as a baby eye's wide fists curled, face cradled in Silas's palm. Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she pressed the locket to her chest. Elijah knelt beside her, his hand covering hers. "He's proud of you," he whispered. She nodded. "I think I finally understand him." Later that night, the rain came. Not a storm. Just a quiet, steady rhythm tapping against the windows. Clara stood in the studio alone, the lights dimmed low, her hands moving slowly over a canvas. She wasn't painting something new, just adding one final stroke to a piece she'd left unfinished months ago. A single line of gold curling like a thread being tied off. She stepped back. It was done. And so was she. Not with her story, but with the part of her that used to believe peace came after the storm. Now she knew better. Peace wasn't what followed the fight. Peace was what she chose to build. Every day, every breath, every brush stroke. Elijah called her from upstairs, his voice low. She smiled, wiped her hands, and turned off the lights. The room faded behind her, soft and whole. Tomorrow would come like it always did. But tonight was exactly enough. It was just after midnight when Clara woke to the sound. Not panic, not pain, but something else. A shift. She lay still for a moment, one hand on her belly. The baby moved, slow, strong, steady. Then came the second sensation. A soft tightening low in her abdomen like a string being drawn gently taut. Not urgent, but not familiar either. She exhaled slowly. "Elijah," she whispered. He stirred beside her, voice husky with sleep. "You okay, I think? Something's starting." He sat up instantly, blinking into the dark. "Contractions. Maybe." He flipped on the bedside lamp, his face now fully awake. "You want to call the doctor?" Clara nodded. While Elijah grabbed the phone, she reached for her robe. The nursery light was still on. She walked toward it instinctively, like muscle memory. The crib glowed in the warm yellow light, quiet and waiting. Elijah joined her a moment later, phone pressed to his ear. "Hi, yes, this is Elijah Moore. My partner, Clara Walsh. She's 38 weeks. We think labor might be starting. Clara didn't listen to the rest. She leaned her head against the doorframe and watched the mobile spin slowly above the crib. The stars were moving. The room felt like a held breath. 10 minutes later, they were packed. No panic, no rush. Clara moved deliberately, breathing through the growing pressure in her back. Elijah had one hand on her lower back, the other steadying her elbow as they stepped outside. The air was warm, still raining just barely. As they pulled out of the driveway, she looked back at the house. It didn't feel like she was leaving something. It felt like she was bringing something home. The birthing center smelled of lavender and antiseptic, soft lights, calm voices. Time blurred after that, compressing into waves and breathing, and the sound of Elijah's voice counting through the pressure. Clara moved through it with a kind of focus she didn't know she had. Not forceful, just absolute. There was a moment somewhere between 4 in the morning and dawn when she thought she might shatter. The pain rose higher than she thought it could. Her breath hitched, her body trembled. "Elijah!" she gasped, voice shaking. "I can't!" He knelt beside her, pressing his forehead to hers. "Yes, you can. I'm afraid I'm not," he whispered. "I know you, and I know the kind of love this child is coming into." Tears spilled down her cheeks, not from pain, but from how fiercely she believed him. And then, the room shifted. Her body bore down. And everything changed. At 6:47 a.m., as the first pink light cracked over the Savannah skyline, their daughter arrived, wet, warm, wailing. Elijah laughed through his tears. Clara sobbed as they placed the baby on her chest. "She's perfect," Clara whispered. "She looks like you," Elijah said. The baby's cries softened her tiny hands, curling into Clara's chest like she'd known it forever. They didn't speak for a while after that. Just held her. Just breathed. Later that afternoon, Clara sat propped in the hospital bed, baby swaddled in her arms. Elijah was asleep on the couch nearby, his arm dangling off the edge, his body still catching up to the emotion of the morning. A knock came at the door. She looked up. Silas stood in the doorway. He didn't speak, just looked. Clara nodded. "Come in." He stepped inside, moving slowly. Not from age, from something else, something reverent. He approached the bed and looked down at the baby. She's beautiful," he said, voice soft. "She's strong," Clara replied. Silas nodded. A long pause stretched between them. Then she reached out and gently placed the baby in his arms. His breath caught. He held her like she was the most delicate thing in the world, and somehow also the most powerful. Clara watched her father's eyes fill. "I named her Elise," she said. Silas looked at her, startled. "That was Mom's favorite name," Clara finished. He swallowed hard, nodding. She would have loved that. "I know." He looked back at the baby, rocking her gently. "I wasn't always right," he said. "But I never stopped trying to do right by you." "I know," Clara said, her voice breaking just slightly. "And you did." Silas bent low and kissed Elise's forehead. "Welcome, little one," he whispered. "You have no idea how much love is waiting for you." Clara wiped her eyes, her chest full, her heart finally whole. Everything that had come before now felt like scaffolding, just there to hold her up long enough to reach this moment. Now the real building could begin. The sun filtered through the lace curtains in Clara's kitchen, casting soft shadows across the countertops. Elise, just 3 months old, was curled against her chest, in a rap sound asleep. The tiny rise and fall of her breathing felt like rhythm, like music no one else could hear. Clara stood barefoot near the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal with one hand while holding a cup of tea in the other. Outside the garden was waking up azaleas, blooming in bursts of pink birds fluttering around the feeder Silas had built. It was quiet, but not empty. Just full of things that didn't need to shout to matter. Elijah stepped in from the back porch, brushing rain off his sleeves. He was barefoot, too, wearing an old button-down with the sleeves rolled. There was something grounding about him that hadn't changed even as the world around them did. "She out?" he asked. Clara nodded and whispered, like a stone. He kissed her temple, then the baby's crown, before reaching for 2 bowls from the cupboard. "You know what I've been thinking about," he said. How we didn't break," he said. "Not you. Not me. Not us." She smiled. "I used to think breaking was the worst thing that could happen. And now I think breaking gave me room to rebuild, the way I was meant to." Elijah handed her a bowl, warm and topped with berries. They sat together at the small kitchen table, the soft morning air wrapping around them like a shawl. After breakfast, Clara moved to the studio. Elise stayed tucked in her wrap, sleeping through the shuffle of brushes and the clink of ceramic palettes. Clara didn't have a specific painting in mind. She just let her hand move color, then texture, then shadow. Each stroke felt like a page in a journal only she could read. A knock came at the front door around midday. She paused. Then another knock, soft, respectful. She walked carefully through the house and opened the door to find a courier standing with a clipboard and a large manila envelope. Clara Walsh. Yes. He handed it over, nodded, and left without a word. She closed the door hard, already inching toward caution. She carried the envelope back to the studio, laid it on the table, and opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a thin-bound document. On the sheet, in Marcus's familiar, precise handwriting, was a note. "Clara, this isn't a plea. It isn't redemption. It's simply closure, clean, legal, complete. I've officially relinquished my claim to any shared property's royalties and creative works from our marriage. Everything that was yours remains yours. Everything I used to control, I've returned. Not because I'm trying to be noble, but because I've learned that true power is letting go. There's no need to respond. I just wanted you to know." Clara read the note 3 times. Her chest didn't tighten like she thought it might. It didn't feel like a wound. It felt like air. She folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside her old journals. Then she carried Elise out to the garden. Silas was already there, pruning back the hydrangeas. He looked up when he saw her smiling in that small, proud way he always did when words would get in the way. "She slept through breakfast," Clara said. "She takes after her mother." He chuckled. Clara sat on the bench under the magnolia tree, Elise still pressed gently against her chest. The sun warmed her shoulders. The world had slowed to a hum. Dad Silas looked up. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being the kind of quiet I needed. The kind that never tried to outshout the storm, just waited until I found my way through it." Silas nodded, his eyes glistening. "You walked it better than I ever could have taught you." She looked down at Elise. "She'll know where she comes from," Clara said, "but she'll also know where she's going, because we gave her both." Later that evening, Elijah returned from town with groceries and news. "They want to feature your work in the spring exhibit," he said, placing the acceptance letter from the Savannah Gallery on the kitchen table. "Every piece from the Riverfront series." Clara touched the letter fingertips, soft on the page. "You gonna do it?" he asked. She smiled. "I already did." They laughed together, easy and warm. Elise stirred, stretching one tiny arm before drifting back to sleep. That night, after the dishes were done and the house settled into silence, Clara sat in the nursery, rocking gently in the chair Silas had restored. She held Elise, her breath sinking with her daughters. She thought about all the versions of herself she'd lived through. The girl who once lost her voice. The woman who found it in courtrooms and canvases. The mother who now whispered lullabies without needing to be heard to be understood. The door creaked softly open. Elijah leaned in barefoot, quiet. "You want me to take her?" he asked. Clara shook her head. "I want to stay like this, just a little longer." He nodded and stepped into the room, kneeling beside her chair. He laid a hand gently on her knee, steadying her like he always had. "She's going to be everything," he whispered. "She already is." And with that, the house breathed full, not broken, not waiting, just living and loving exactly as it was meant to.